Giannis Antetokounmpo could be sidelined for weeks after re-injuring his right calf in Friday's loss to Denver. He had the calf wrapped early, left late, saying he could no longer move. Experts said an MRI that could result in a 4 to 6 week absence. The Bucks have lost 5 of their last 6. They sit 11th in the East, and with the trade deadline approaching, questions about Giannis and his health are definitely there. Looking at what he's been able to do over his career, 2-time MVP, NBA champion, one of the most loyal superstars that the league has seen, 13 seasons in Milwaukee. But per reports, conversations between Giannis and the Bucks about his future have recently intensified. So with that, we bring in our Sam Quinn, our John Gonzalez. You guys put together a list of landing spots for Giannis if he is traded. We're going to start with the New York Knicks. Giannis has reportedly viewed New York as a preferred destination before. Do the Knicks actually have the assets and the appetite to make this deal happen? Sam, what's your thoughts?
Well, the star usually gets what he wants, right? The Knicks don't have the most to offer. They don't have their own picks. They traded all of them for Mikal Bridges. I think the breakthrough bit of reporting that we got over the weekend was that the Portland Trailblazers are potentially interested in Mikal Bridges. That's especially relevant because Portland controls 3 future Bucks first-round picks from the Damian Lillard trade a few years ago. There are no more valuable draft picks to any team than their own because those are the picks they can control. If the Bucks can get control of some of their own picks back, they can actually start to rebuild, tank a few years, make some high draft picks. If the Knicks can get some of those Portland picks back to Milwaukee, now we might have a workable framework. The Bucks shouldn't want Mikal Bridges. They shouldn't want Karl-Anthony Towns. They should want to get younger. They should want draft picks. This would not be a 2-team trade. We would have to loop in a 3rd team, maybe a 4th to take Karl-Anthony Towns. But if there is enough interest in Mikal Bridges, Karl-Anthony Towns, maybe OG Anunoby from other teams, you could cobble together a 3, 4, 5-team package that might make enough sense to get this thing across the finish line.
Yeah, this is the interesting one, right? Because this is where he was rumored to want to go during the offseason. But I think what Sam touched on there is interesting as well, that what you're talking about, in order to get Giannis, because they mortgaged so much of their draft capital in order to secure Mikal Bridges, it would have to be kind of an overhaul of this team that they had just put together and thought, oh, well, we went to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in 25 years. We have designs on going to the NBA Finals for the first time in even longer. And, oh, wait a minute, maybe we're going to have to unplug Karl-Anthony Towns and Mikal Bridges in order to bring in Giannis. Now, it's Giannis, so I would certainly advocate on behalf of that. But I think that the Knicks, prior to winning these last 2 games against the Sixers and the Nets, had kind of been in free fall, right? They're in 4th place now. They're 6.5 games behind the Pistons. They trail the Celtics and the Raptors. And, oh, by the way, that defense is not good. They're 17th in defensive rating, right? And part of the problem there is that their 2 best offensive players are 2 of their biggest defensive liabilities in Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns. You're not going to move on from Jalen Brunson, but now all of a sudden you're starting to think about, okay, can we move on from Karl-Anthony Towns, and could we potentially land Giannis? And I think if there's any chance of them doing it, they should think about it.
If they can get it done, get her done. How about the Miami Heat? You guys liked Miami for this one as well. They've been linked with Giannis for years. Is this finally the moment that we could push to get this happening? Sam, you start.
Yeah. I think the Heat are so interesting here because there is a world in which Giannis goes to the Bucks and says, I only want to play for the Knicks. And that's going to scare off a lot of the other suitors. It's not going to scare off the Miami Heat. The Heat are not afraid to take risks. They're not going to be afraid to trade for somebody because they have that much faith in their ability to get guys to commit. They're such a good recruiting team. You bring Giannis in there, you ideally pair him with Bam Adebayo. You're trading all of your other valuable assets. Tyler Hero, Wisconsin native, going back to the Bucks in that deal. That prized young big man, Kel'el Ware, who's got a very, very bright future. He'd go back to the Bucks as well. You're talking about all of your future picks. They already owe 1 to Charlotte, so it gets a little bit tricky. But you could do 2 first-round picks, 3 first-round swaps. Go down the roster, your Jaime Jaquez's, your Nikola Jovic's, all of those younger guys who maybe aren't quite, starter, cornerstone of a deal type of guys, but are valuable players nonetheless. You're talking about stacking all of those guys. It might not be a great offer, but it's better than what the Knicks can give. And if that's the bar here, I think Miami has a chance.
What about for the Warriors in Golden State, Sam? Giannis is kind of like the swing that justifies reshaping this kind of end of era for Steph Curry. What do you think about Golden State?
Yeah, the idea here for the Bucks would be, wouldn't you want to short Golden State's future? Stephen Curry is 37. Draymond Green is old as well. And even Giannis, still one of the best players in the NBA, but he's in his 30s. He's had injury problems. His playing style doesn't figure to age especially well. You get Giannis and Curry on the same team. They're going to be very good for a year, for 2 years, maybe 3 years. But if you're talking about trading all of your future picks, the 4 first-round picks, 3 first-round swaps, going all the way out to 2032, now you're talking about some draft picks that, in the late 2020s and the early 2030s are going to be some of the most valuable in the entire NBA. You'd have to be patient, but if the Bucks are looking for an example of ways in which that can work, they only have to look to Portland, who they gave all of their picks to get Damian Lillard. And right now, it looks like Portland's sitting on a gold mine with those picks. So it would take a few years for that trade to really bear fruit. But if the Bucks are willing to be patient, there's a pretty interesting trade to be made there.
Yeah, Giannis to the Warriors is one of the big rumors. One of the things that, NBA fantasy land has been thinking about for a while now, right? What it would it look like if you paired him with Steph? And now you have the Jimmy Butler situation with the ACL, and that would help with the salary matching purposes. Maybe you move on from Jonathan Kuminga. That's a nice young player that the Bucks might be able to employ. But kind of what Sam said here, does it work for the Warriors? Because, you figure with Steph and Giannis, they would be monsters together. But Giannis and Draymond would certainly, they'd work on the defensive end, but you'd have serious spacing issues yet again in the same way that you would have spacing issues, with Butler and Kuminga and Draymond as well. So I wonder if it's, the idea of it sounds pretty good, but I wonder if in practice, in execution, if it would work out. And as Sam mentioned, Steph's 37. Time is ticking, right? You want to maximize that window. He's still really good. He made All-NBA last season. He's going to make All-NBA again this season. On paper, adding Giannis would certainly help, but I wonder if in execution it would work long term.
You always wonder, it's like this concept sounds great, but how would it actually play out? How do you think it would actually play out if Giannis ends up with the Houston Rockets? John, we'll start with you.
Yeah, this is one of those scenarios where can they? Yes, they can pull it off. They've got a lot of assets and a lot of young players. The real question here is, should they, right? Because the Rockets have a ton of draft capital, and they have a lot of really good, young, useful players. Reed Shepard, Tari Eason, Jabari Smith. Salary matching purposes, you throw in a Fred VanVleet, who's still recovering from an ACL injury. So all of that works, right? Boom, successful trade. But I like this Rockets team. I like where they are. They've been uneven, sure. They've been up and down in the standings. They're 4th in the Western Conference, but they're top 10 in both offense and defense. And they've got 3 killers in KD, Alperen Şengün, and Amen Thompson. If it's up to me, I'm leaving the Rockets alone. Yes, I know it's Giannis. Yes, he's one of the great players in the NBA, not just of his era, but of any era. But I want to see what this Rockets team can become. I want to get at least another postseason out of them before I tinker with this group.
Yeah, John, I completely agree. It's not just a matter of the iffy fit and how good they are right now. The Rockets have the assets to trade for basically anybody. Do you want to fire those bullets now on a guy in his 30s, or do you want to wait a couple of years and see, like, maybe Anthony Edwards gets a little frustrated in Minnesota, or maybe somebody a bit younger somewhere else in the league? You want to keep all of these bullets chambered so that when the right guy becomes available, the guy who fits with the team you actually have, not forces you to rebuild your entire roster, you still have the chips to go get that guy. So I'm sitting out Giannis if I'm Houston, and I am waiting for a younger player, ideally a guard, ideally a shooter.
John, what about the Hawks, sitting right under 500 right now? What do you think about Giannis joining that team?
Yeah, they were one of the teams that was rumored to be interested in the hunt, and then all of a sudden lately that's cooled, partly because they don't want to give up on Jalen Johnson. In theory, if you're the Bucks, that's the number one guy that you'd want in return, right? Well, Jalen Johnson is having a career year. He leveled up last year. This year he's playing even better. He's averaging almost a 23-point triple-double. I can understand why they wouldn't want to move on from him because he's the face of the franchise. The other hiccup here in the Hawks not really being interested is they don't want to give up on, they have the Pelicans unprotected, the better of the Bucks or the Pelicans unprotected 2026 first-round draft pick. So the Hawks all of a sudden went from being, yeah, we'd love to have Giannis to, I don't know if we want to give up those assets. And it makes sense from their perspective.
Totally makes sense there. All right, well, our eyes will all be on Giannis, and you guys got us prepared for what could be. Appreciate you both looking at what he's done once again. 2-time MVP, NBA champ, Finals MVP, one of the most dominant players of this generation. He would instantly elevate any contender, transform a franchise if need be. So whether he stays in Milwaukee or not, his future has become one of those defining questions. We'll see what happens.
Dub Nation, listen to me for a second, because what is happening right now in the NBA is not normal. And if you are a Golden State Warriors fan, you should be paying very close attention to everything surrounding Giannis Antetokounmpo, Milwaukee, and the shifting power structure of this league. This is one of those moments that can quietly reshape an entire era, and Golden State is sitting right in the middle of it. Giannis is hurt again. The Bucks are spiraling in the standings. The trade deadline is approaching, and suddenly the idea of Giannis and Steph Curry wearing the same jersey is no longer some wild fantasy from NBA Twitter. It is being discussed by analysts, insiders, and front offices as a real, complicated, but very possible scenario. First, let's talk about what Giannis is dealing with. This calf injury is not just some random setback. It is something he has dealt with before, and that is what makes it so dangerous. Calf strains have a history in the NBA of leading to much more serious issues, including Achilles problems. The Bucks know that. Giannis knows that. And when you hear him talking about being out 4 to 6 weeks, about hoping the team can just stay afloat and make the play-in, you can hear the frustration in his voice. This is not a man talking like someone who believes his team is about to make a deep playoff run. This is a superstar who sees the walls closing in around a roster that is underperforming badly. Milwaukee is sitting near the bottom of the East playoff picture. They are losing games, the vibes are bad, and now their franchise player is sidelined again at the worst possible time. That matters because Giannis is not just any player. He is a 2-time MVP, an NBA champion, a finals MVP, one of the most physically dominant forces this league has ever seen. When someone like that starts getting frustrated, when his team is losing, when his body is breaking down, the league starts to shift. Front offices start making calls. Teams that have been waiting for a crack in the door suddenly see it opening. And Golden State is one of the teams that could benefit the most from that chaos. Think about where the Warriors are right now. Steph Curry is 37 years old, still playing at an all-NBA level, still bending defenses, still carrying the offense. But everyone in that organization knows the clock is ticking. You don't get many more seasons of this version of Steph. Draymond is older. Klay is not the same athlete he once was. Jimmy Butler, who was supposed to help stabilize this team, is now out with a torn ACL. The Warriors are not rebuilding. They are in win-now mode, whether they admit it or not. And when you are in win-now mode with a superstar like Steph, you don't get to sit back and wait for perfect conditions. You swing big. That is why Giannis changes everything. On paper, Steph Curry and Giannis Antetokounmpo would be one of the most terrifying duos in NBA history. You would have the greatest shooter ever paired with one of the most unstoppable paint forces ever. How do you guard that? If you collapse on Giannis, Steph and the Warriors shooters torch you. If you stay home on Steph, Giannis is dunking on everyone. It would break defensive schemes. It would force teams to pick their poison. And that is exactly what Golden State needs right now. Someone who can take the offensive burden off Steph while also elevating the defense and rebounding. Now, is it complicated? Absolutely. The Bucks would not give Giannis away for nothing. They would want picks, young players, and control over Golden State's future. They would be betting that after a few years of Steph and Giannis, the Warriors would fall off, and those draft picks in the late 2020s and early 2030s would become gold. That is a real risk. But ask yourself this as a Warriors fan. What is the alternative? Slowly fading into mediocrity while Steph is still great? Wasting the final years of one of the greatest players of all time because you were afraid to push your chips in? Golden State has always been bold. They were bold when they drafted Steph. They were bold when they stuck with him through injuries. They were bold when they signed Kevin Durant. And those bold moves brought championships. Giannis would be another one of those franchise-altering swings. It would be risky, it would be expensive, but it would give the Warriors a real shot at another title in the Steph era. And what makes this moment even more intense is the timing. Milwaukee is losing. Giannis is hurt. The trade deadline is coming. Other teams are calling. The Knicks, the Heat, the Rockets. Everyone wants a piece of Giannis if he becomes available. But Golden State has something unique. a proven championship culture, a superstar that Giannis would respect, and a system that could make his life easier than it has ever been. He would not have to be the sole offensive engine. He would not have to create everything. He could just attack, dominate, and let Steph and the Warriors shooters handle the rest. So when you hear analysts talking about Giannis to the Warriors, when you see his frustration, when you see Milwaukee slipping, do not brush it off. This is how NBA history gets written. These things always start with injuries, frustration, and bad seasons. Then one phone call changes everything. Dub Nation, this is not a rumor to laugh at. This is a possibility to watch very closely. Because if the Warriors get Giannis, the entire league changes overnight. Let me know what you think in the comments. Would you go all in on Giannis for Steph's final championship run, or is the risk too big? If you love Warriors basketball, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story is only getting bigger from here.